like it live. Nobody,
Okay, this meeting just went live online.
we're online right now, so I'm just letting everybody know. I actually clicked the button. So we're recording.
Where's,
Well, whatever you're gonna spend it on.
I don't know.
And cancel it.
I know Ken had some people ask if it was going to be Zoom available or YouTube available, so there might be people that are interested that want to watch from home.
Can you tell how many's on for this?
So,
Can you tell how many people's on Zoom?
Currently, yes, I can tell, currently 0 people are on Zoom.
Okay.
But I literally just turned it on, so it usually takes a few minutes for people to log in.
Right.
We all rise to the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
yep, I'll do that. Roll call, Bud, Barb,
Here.
Alan, Tabitha,
Here.
Leslie,
Here.
Ken,
Present.
thank you.
Okay, who's gonna, Gary, are you gonna start?
I'll just start and say, whenever it gets to the point, I gave handouts to all of council tonight and the mayor. OPWC grants, small government grants, and our financial monies available for the year as determined by the budget at the end of last year. And so if and when it gets into a discussion about grants based on Alan's presentation, I'm prepared to talk about it, and if it doesn't come up, we'll talk about it. So go ahead, Alan.
Really, I think this was brought up, unfortunately, Bud's not here, but he brought up the concept of a RETA tax, which is the village evidently has the right to impose up to a 1% income tax on that. And obviously, that's a possibility. Gary has some experience with Burbank, did the same thing. And people have strong feelings that I've heard, and maybe people in the audience maybe want to address that, or council members. I personally find it difficult. It's almost like a taxation without representation. When you look at the bottom line for us, we don't have the mini marts, Chippewa beverage, and maybe Cycles R Us are in the village.
Wait, we do have many more.
Yeah, we do, but we don't have businesses, large businesses
Right.
that would really boast the amount of money that you get. RETA evidently goes against only those that are employed, the working people. Your retirement incomes, I believe, are not taxed, not positive on your R&D from your IRA, which is, I'm going to say it's probably is taxed. So you're affecting the working class, working people in our community. Cycle that with the last real estate tax increase, average in Medina County was 27%. I did have a conversation today with Treasurer John Burke, really needs to be with the auditor, I apologize, but John's a personal friend of mine, but he's got he's got his pulse, or knows the pulse of everything. Next round of real estate taxes, we're talking 30%. Wow.
Yeah.
So that hits people really hard. The other is, us as a community, we've been functional, very functional, trying to accomplish what we can with the resources that we do have. And we all want more, would want more. When you get into these large road projects, it's just horrendous amounts of money. I agree with Bud would want more. Maybe it's an anomaly on cost, but small projects are just costly. And when you just do one block, if you're doing several blocks over more at a time, but they have to bring in all this heavy equipment to do the project, and, you know, if it's sitting, you're still paying for it somewhat. So I didn't know if we could do different strategies. Instead of doing one block, could we do 2 blocks and save some money if we were a little more patient to acquire the funds, and basically we just pass 1 year or 2 years, so you got to build up enough cash to meet what the requirements are. So it's a complicated question. If you need more money, generally we have to play with the cards we're dealt. This is what you got. I'm a cash flow guy just from a business standpoint. I look at cash flow daily, sometimes twice a day, because you got accounts receivables and payables, and you got so much money coming in and out, and you have a credit line or whatever you can tap. But unfortunately, the way that the UAN accounting comes to us, it's more like balance sheets and income statements. It's not a daily activity level. And maybe it's inside of that. Maybe Gary can give me a little more advice on it. But I've tried to, in my reports, I tried to understand where the incomes were coming from on a monthly basis. And then I was starting to work on the payouts, a little more difficult. And then when you got into the payouts, we got into some large numbers. I had to validate them, but we paid out over $1 million. Some of those were pass-throughs for sewer and water, stuff like that, but that's $1 million when you accomplish one block. Oh,
Is that this here?
no, this is completed jobs. I think this was something that Keith had.
This is something, yeah, that Keith made up, and you all got a copy of this. He actually brought this over to me about a year ago, and I forgot he said he had it. But what this does is it shows you all the phases we've had on our OPWC grants for our road work, and starting in phase 1, which was Longacre and Bass Bay. That was about 2003. Then you see that he goes all the way through to phase 9, which is the one we completed last year. And he has all the different information about them, but the interesting number is probably the amount of money we paid out over these 9, well, it took more than 9 years because we didn't get one every year. And then 1 year we actually got 2. But we paid out $313,000. And we got in return from OPWC $2,470,000 and change. So you could see why we would go for these grants. And you also notice if you start phase 1, the difference between, or how things went up as far as the jobs in our match, it's gone up dramatically. And I believe it's phase 6. The one that had parent construction, that was Craig Creek. And at the time, that was our biggest job that we'd gotten. And you could see the cost of that compared to the one that we have sitting in front of us, that phase 10, which is Brookshore from Rockbridge to Briarwood Boulevard, is almost $800,000, or almost $1 million, really. It's $858,000. I believe that is phase 10, option B, on the sheet that Bud gave us last week, where, actually, it's option A, and that one's $843,000. That one,
Where is that? Yeah.
the paper that Bud gave us.
That's in our emails. I don't know if those were printed out.
Bud gave us these at the last council meeting.
This one here.
And so he's got those figures on, and he has the different phases. Phase 9 is the one we've just completed. That one's done.
Oh, this one right here?
Yeah.
Where I took $1 million.
Says,
I didn't read that. I'm
Okay, so phase 10, he's got these split into two things. Now, what he's saying is the phase 10, that's 858,000 or 843,000, is on Brookshore. He has from Rockridge to Rustic Brook. And I called him and said, Rockridge and Brookshore and Rustic Brook don't hook up. So what he means is, if you guys are familiar, we have done the lower part of Brookshore. We've just got that done. We did from Beachside up to Rockridge. I wanted to say Lazy, but that's on my street. So this one would be from Rockridge up to and crossing Briarwood Boulevard to go to that section of that road that's in kind of the back there.
That's one that kind of circles around and then turns into Rustic Brook.
Right, and all those roads, Clover Cliff, all of them, Rustic Brook, yes.
Yes.
Circle Crest,
Circle Crest turns into Rustic
street
Brook.
right over there. And so you got a little portion of Clover Cliff and Brookshore and Rustic Brook up in that area. So that job, that phase 10 option A would cover that. That phase 10 option B is from Rockridge to Briarwood Boulevard only, so you still have that other section. The option B one is $568 and change. So those are the two that we could apply for. We did not apply for phase 10, which would have been the $843,000 one last year or the year before. Well, I guess this year we could have, last year we did not, it was too much, can't afford it. The match on that one is high. So he gave you this sheet with the different options there, which you can figure out. And what I can figure out is I don't think we can afford them at this moment, that instead of applying for these every year, we need to take maybe a year, 2, maybe 3 years off and build up some money. So they're not continuously paying up. Well, these amounts are bigger, that's all there is to it. The prices are higher and they'll go higher, we know that.
And they keep increasing. Phase 9 isn't even completely filled out on here because I'm assuming Keith didn't have that exact figures and information.
Yeah, that was, gave us to me why phase 9 just ended.
Right. And that was probably almost double of what phase 8 was.
Right, and like the one, the parent construction one, see the cost on that one, that was the entire length of Craig Creek, which is, by our standards, one of our bigger roads. The one last year, phase 9, was just Brookshore from,
Just part of it, right?
Just
From
half of it, just
Rockridge to Beachside.
right, so it's so small, and so you see right there, the difference in costs of that, how they've gone up, and they're not gonna go down. And then, of course, we took a loan to go with this one, because we were told that that was needed. It's not needed, but we did it anyway, and I personally, you guys can figure out which one, but I personally am against getting more loans and piling them one on top of the other, even though they are interest-free. But that's just me. Anyhow, this is Keith's, it's interesting, this sheet. We haven't had one of these before.
Well, I don't know that we can make any decisions this meeting other than gathering our thoughts and knowledge. It's a complex issue, and I apologize, this packet, I did not have a chance to review.
Well, the other thing you might want to know is Bud came and talked to you tonight, Gary, about just our standard road repairs, our repairs in the springtime. It used to be, you'd go around and you pay maybe $20-some thousand and get all the damage from the winter repair. The last couple of years, that's been in the $50,000 range. He's got the estimate for this year at $74,000. That's just to fix the roads. This isn't any grants or anything. It's just repair them from the damage
Potholes and.
the winter did and so forth. And
So you're saying it went from 20 to 50, now we're up to 74 this year.
right, so again, everything just keeps going up. So that also affects how much money we have for these grants. And in my opinion, it's more important to get the winter damage fixed, that affects certainly more of our citizens. You got people, oh, we got potholes over here, over here, over here.
So,
The cost of all this is, you can, as you can see, it's just going up with what isn't in the world, but, so I would think our priority would be to get that kind of job done for sure, and then see where we're at with grant money.
Can we do anything cooperative with Lafayette Township to soften that number?
I know that we did have some complaints about, some plowing damaging some things.
Yeah, we had Lafayette, well, no, we can't get them to do that. I don't know what to say.
I know they got a writer's mailbox, they got a bunch of gravel on it, but that's stuff that's on
They have,
right away.
they have a whole, skid of mailboxes, I'm told. So since this is, fairly new still to council, I have some questions about, do we do any type of strategic planning on council? Do we do a 5-year plan, maintenance plans, to try to determine future expenditures? I mean, I don't know if like the parks have a 5-year plan, this needs done every so often and that needs done. Because from what I've seen, I see sometimes some reactive, being reactive, that, this is broke, now we gotta fix it, this is broke, now I gotta fix it. So I'm wondering if in addition to this, maybe we do, and I haven't been part of that yet, I don't know.
Well, we always know we're gonna have the winter. Now, we've had fairly mild winter, kind of a rough winter this year with the low temperatures and everything.
Right.
So that, some of that probably plays into why this is a little bit more also.
Mhm.
But
The answer.
what I'm saying is every
okay.
spring we have this. We know we're gonna have this every spring with the roads in the winter,
Right.
just the way it is. So,
Well, and I mean in general, for everything in the whole village, like, do we have a plan
no.
for repairs in the future? Or do we just react to things as they come along?
We just react when you come.
Well, on the roads thing, they had several phases laid out. They kind of identified the roads in the order.
Yeah, there is a plan for
We're gonna do there, but nothing beyond that. Until, phase 9 came up, I think at the engineering associates, and they come up with budgets against current numbers.
These are things I was thinking about today in preparation for this meeting. I know that in the future, we're probably gonna have some openings on council, and I would really like to, I personally would like to see us like having forethought. Like if Bud decides he wants to retire, who's gonna take over streets and these numbers, and think about applying for grants. I mean, I'm still learning about grants, and I definitely don't want that responsibility. It's a lot to think of. I would really like us, besides.
The grants are very tricky, and that's why we always hire engineering associates to help. We're lucky enough to have Gary here who does file for the grants in Burbank, so he understands them.
Right,
I've been working with them. I don't pretend to understand all of them, but I understand a lot of them.
and
But
there's so
I
many
know the
grants
average
and
council
grants.
person does not, why would you? We just say, okay, we're getting this grant and it goes good. I mean, it is complicated, and between Gary and Josh from Engineering Associates, they basically handle the whole thing, because it's very involved, this formula that they use, and you can get your OPWC grant, and then if you don't get that one, they put you in the small government grant. You could have the very same grant, and if you were going for an OPWC grant, you would call it a road repair. But if you were going in the small government, you'd have to call it something like sewer replacement. It's just, they like that better. Just crazy stuff that gives you points. Some of the things was that when they started about this long, that they gave you more points. And Gary, I know you understand the points. Why don't you explain it? I'm sure it's real easy.
Not
So
really.
that's evaluation.
Yes, what I handed out to council and the mayor was, your first one is we'll have public works scoring evaluation. And what's interesting about that, now let me start it with this one. OPWC is established for this type of grant work, meaning road replacement, repair, and storm sewers. It's called infrastructure. So under OPWC, you have two programs, SCIP, and then you also have LTI. I won't get in, I guess I'm getting too deep in the woods already. Anyways, the public works grants are quite involved. It is all based on scoring. And for the straight OPWC grants, there are 14 categories that every community is rated on. Village Council has the ability to impact 5 of those ratings. The other 9 are predetermined, basically. So where you make the most and the best effort to get a grant is in those 5 areas that we control. And all 5 areas relate to how much money, Village of Chippewa Lake, are you going to invest on your own and not have to use grant money. That's what the scoring is all about. So on the straight OPWC grant, like I say, we control 5 out of the 14 categories. If we don't win a OPWC grant and it goes to small government, we control 2 out of 5 categories. And again, it's all about how much money are you, Village of Chippewa Lake, going to invest in these projects? The philosophy has changed, unfortunately, over the years. When I saw that you folks were getting grants and you were only having to put in 10 to 11%, I couldn't believe it. In Burbank, we have to put in 20 to 30 to 40%. You guys have been working out for years. I wish we could have all been that way.
How did we get by with that? How did we?
The philosophy.
I like this better.
Yeah. I don't know what
That was
changed.
that, and this is.
Yeah, it's just the difference.
Money well spent at Engineering Associates.
Yes. So, again, and I've highlighted in yellow, so everybody can see what the categories are that we can control. So you don't have to read through everything. If you want to see the 5, look at everything that's got a yellow highlight. And that tells you exactly what we control and how we impact the points. But unfortunately, because of the change in philosophy now, yes, the villages are expected to put in more monies. That's a requirement. And everything's based on points, and the more money you put in, the more points you get. The lesser money you put in, the fewer points you get. So that's true in all the communities. So all the communities have to look at it, putting in more of their own monies to get these grants. It's just a fact of life. That's how it is. And these worksheets show you how that works. So I wish there were a way around it, but unfortunately there is not. Yes.
Wasn't there a conversation about a House bill?
Yeah, issue 2 in May. Issue 2
So,
is funding, is this
I know that we had
OPWC
said
funding?
something about waiting to make some kind of decision, so let's see if that passes. Because if
Right.
it doesn't pass, then this is all mute.
Right.
It could, be. Now I disagree with that point of view, and I know I could be the only one, and that's all right. My point of view is get the engineering done. The engineering will be good, whether it has to sit 1 year or 5 years or 10. Getting the engineering done also helps you on the points. So when this thing kicks in, and I'm gonna be positive about this and say state issue 2 will pass. So if you get your engineering done, we'll be ready to hit the road running, and we'll get extra points for it, and you don't lose a thing. Even if issue 2 should not pass, the engineering will still be done. It's not like you've wasted that money and wasted that investment. You've got to get the engineering done anyway. If you wait, it's going to cost you more for engineering next year. Do it this year when we know exactly what the costs are. That's my
So
point.
how long is it good for? You throw out some numbers, you definitely,
For the engineering?
yeah,
It's good indefinitely unless they change engineering standards.
okay,
Now, if they change engineering standards, then those engineering costs would have to be, there would be some additional engineering work, which means you'd have to put in some additional monies.
But you wouldn't be paying for the whole engineering thing all over again.
Update.
No, there'll just be sections of it. They would, because it's the guidelines, the engineering specifications created by the state through ODOT. That's what we all designed to, is ODOT standards, basically. And they're not gonna change every level of standard in ODOT. They'll change segments of it as technology improves and different ways are found to do different things. But it wouldn't be like the engineering you do today would be totally scrapped because they made some adjustments in the specification.
Well, that makes sense to me.
If we put out 60,000 now this year for engineering, because looking at how it's gone up, you can guesstimate it's gonna be probably 60 to 65 based on the increase every single phase. We sit on it for 2 years, maybe 3 years, so the village can build up the funds, so we can have the match, so we can be awarded a grant. We might have to pay another 12 to 20,000 2 years from now for re-engineering, possibly,
Or
or none.
possibly nothing.
Those kind of standards don't change that radically.
Right.
They're, I mean, a sewer's a sewer, unless they change the material system or something.
That
It's all
makes
gonna be
sense.
pretty constant.
So the engineering is the game plan, but it does not have cost involvement as far as what the project would cost to complete, because that's an ever-changing based on materials.
Right, the engineering is part of the overall cost, but it basically does not affect the cost of construction.
The actual project.
Now, they would more than likely give you what you went with, what your cost would be for completing the project.
An estimate.
Yes. They give you guidance when you go out to bid on that. Now, some of my disgruntlement, a couple things on engineering. The last road person we had a 4-day work week.
They all do. They've all gone.
I don't know. I'm giving you $500,000, you're gonna work 4 days a week.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, they work 10-hour days, 10 to 12-hour days.
Well, I can expect that, but if they have a rain day,
Mhm.
then you can expect 10 or 15% rain day loss.
Mhm.
So my problem with 4-day work weeks with heavy equipment, you're paying those heavy equipments to be idle. So I think it's a very poor.
Don't they bid the job though? And isn't it based on the job, whether they do it in 2 months or?
Yeah, but you're still paying, if you got heavy equipment for 6 weeks, you got 6 weeks. And that's 6 weeks if they work 24 days versus 30 days.
Who was the last crew we had here?
Baker.
Baker, GE Baker engineer.
We didn't pay them extra because they had to stay through a rainy day or anything, did we?
No, that's all built in.
Because I remember when most paving was down here, they were here until dark.
And they factor all that into their cost estimate. I mean, they know they're only gonna work 4-day work weeks.
Okay.
And that's all factored into the cost estimate. And if they lose time because of weather, and they have to work additional time towards the end of it, you don't get charged extra for that. It's a fixed cost
That's
contract.
what that's what I thought.
Now,
So if they
some-
do need that equipment extra time, if they're renting it themselves,
It's on them.
that's something that they have to absorb.
Right.
They don't pass that on to us.
Now, if something during the project changes, like something was missed during the engineering phase, that would be an extra. But
Right.
that happens seldom. I haven't seen it once in any of our projects.
We always build a little extra money in on our end, in case there is something that happens, and there's something that happens on each one of them.
OPWC demands that you put in a 10% contingency. You have to do that, just for that reason. And many times we don't use those contingency monies. Okay, so the project ends up coming in a little bit less than originally bid. But sometimes you do use the contingency.
Then does that 10% come back to the village, or is that?
It's not spent. It's sitting there in the budget that if you have to spend it. you do.
Okay. If we have to spend it, it's
If you
there.
have to spend
Okay.
Mhm.
Now, like on phase 9, we saved $7,000. Because we didn't have to use some of those contingency monies. So the overall cost of the contracted work was reduced by 7,000. It was 7,000 less than bid because of that.
Keith has done things over the years too, that when you get these bids and they send the contractor in, the contractor usually has somebody that's on the job site all the time. So a lot of the time Keith would volunteer to do that. Now, of course, we don't have a lot of Keiths around that are gonna go do something like that, but he would do that and save us some money there. And I don't think they said,
Recruiting future Keiths is what it sounds like.
yeah, well, if anybody knows one.
But we had somebody interviewed for a council position several years ago, a few years back. That was a civil engineer that worked for a developer in the new roads and sewers and streets that are named by, for guys naming good stuff, Irma's son, I believe. So there was a person in the village. Gary's right in his explanation, but my point is when they were building out their budgets for this project, they built in a 4-day work week. They built in rain days. They built in overages. So you're paying it up front. They're not making adaptations to it, nor are they giving it back to you if it was less. So that's just the way people create their budgets. The world's around people 4-day work weeks and bless their soul. For top dollar, I work 4 days a week, so that's.
Was it only the experience with Baker, or, I mean, you said that it was like that in Burbank too?
Right. I mean, we always go out for bids on all these projects, be it Burbank or be it here.
Right.
And we'll get 5 to 7 contractors bidding for work.
How morning did Thompson Electric have a 4-day week?
Part of them did, yes.
Well, I know, because I know someone that works at Most Paving, and some days they're working on Saturdays on shopping plazas, and, I mean, I've never heard of that until Al just said that, so.
Well, it's just my experience, and that's just a personal business. If you're looking for maximum efficiency, that's not maximum efficiency.
Oh, I've driven by construction sites and thought, why is no one here? It's a beautiful day, it's Thursday, it's, whatever, so I understand, but I just didn't realize this last group was working.
Well, the same way, from a budget standpoint, tree removal in the building, we're always reactionary to a tree. Example brought up was the big tree up by the tennis courts, $2,500 to do one tree. You can get it for $4,000 for a whole day. So if we planned out better what our tree removal would be and not be reactionary, and sometimes you have to.
Well, if they think it's leaning towards their house and,
Well, I drove by it, that's a big tree.
yeah,
How we get to them. But my point was that we're gonna pay $2,500 to have that one tree removed, because he's gotta bring in a big, lift or extension ladder, because he can't cut it from the top and let it fall down, he's gotta control the fall.
and this is no offense to AJ, but have we ever quoted anyone else, or do we just stay with the same contractors that we've?
I think
always
over
had?
the years we have, and that's why we keep calling him, because he always consistently
And
has.
locally, he's been responsive, but maybe it comes a time when you're trying to do it, and these were
And
small
like the
projects.
mosquito thing, like I don't wanna tick off the mosquito guy, we were talking, you were
No,
saying.
you don't want to take off the mosquito guy. You
He's gonna forget about your
mosquito guys are right. You get a new guy, I mean, like I said, wait a year, and I think that kid was here. He was here, actually came in, but until you hear how that goes in the Glens, I would be really reluctant to part with our guy,
Right,
and then find out the guy in the Glens didn't work out,
right,
or he couldn't afford the insurance, or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's good,
or
that's
year
good
after a year, right.
point.
So at least a year. Because our guy's been good to us.
But in this example probably wasn't a good one, because that tree does, I mean, if it falls on her house now that she pointed it out to us, then we have a problem.
Yeah, that's the
I'm
difference on
very-
this one now, we've been notified now. that
Oh, I
there's-
agree, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm talking about
But we are very
getting the
reactionary,
cost
and,
of what you can get accomplished for the same amount of money.
right,
I can't believe Brandenburg's always finding trees to take down, he certainly could find a group.
he said
Matt
they
has
looked
the
at that
entire
one
list.
before, he said that one up there on the.
They have
Well,
looked at that
AJ
one
said it's
before.
kind of been on a watch list,
It has.
so.
So I don't know if they found any more trees to take
Well,
down.
I'm sure
They
they
did.
do, they got a
They did.
checklist,
Yeah.
and some are more important than others, but if the trees are gonna require a extension left. Isolate those, and get them done as quick as you can. Just get it, pay $4,000 and get 5 or 6 trees done, as opposed to $2,500 to get one done.
Another
That's just a
2,500 to get another
strategy.
done.
Right. We're coming to your house.
So I guess, Gary, unfortunately, Bud does these all on his own. Maybe does it with your guidance on these
Yeah,
budgets?
we work together.
Okay.
And he works with Josh from engineering.
Correct.
Okay. So I don't know if we can ask Josh more questions. My question is, okay, if you did the first 2 parts of Brook Shore, or the first 2 sections of Brook Shore as opposed to 1, is there any cost savings that can be garnered from that?
Bud received 2 bids from Josh. One was based on going only partially of the rest of the way on Brook Shore. The other one was going all the way to the end of Brook Shore. The partial, we only went part way, total engineering and construction is $568,500. To go all the way, as the mayor indicated, was $843,500.
So the second section, $200,000 less. Well,
Doing only a partial, that's correct.
partial on both, or just
No.
one partial and another?
One partial and a complete. Right, bringing it complete from where they stopped construction this year, all the way to the end, that's the $843,500. Going up only partial the way from where they started this year is $568,000.
You familiar with how these roads cross?
Yeah,
Railroad
well, the
Boulevard.
point is, what I'm trying to show you is, if you did both of them, if you did one section at $500X and the next section for 500, that's $1 million. If you do them both together, if I understood what the quote was, you get it done for $848. So you can look at a number of different ways. It's 20% savings, 50% savings, if you can be patient and build up the cash reserve to do the project, or if you want to belly up a bigger loan.
And what's in line after Brook Shore? I mean, is there
Park Lake, there's some Railroad Boulevard,
Mystic Brook hasn't been done.
and we haven't done Northville.
Yeah. North, all,
Lee
everything
Lore, I
past the
think.
creek, except for, yeah, everything past the creek.
Well, wasn't part of the problem with like Lee Lore and Brook Shore, or Shorefield, what'd you say, Lee Lore and what, Shorefield, Northville?
Shorefield,
But there's
Northville.
it's flat, there's no place for any stormwater to go, so that was, I remember Keith saying years ago that was a huge, can't,
Well, I don't know that when they did those the first time, did they do the sewers and the water and all that other stuff? I can't answer that. It's
Yes.
before my time.
no,
So really-
but I'm just saying, I remember Keith
That's
saying
with
that.
Long Acre, and you know how they have the sewer down the middle?
Mhm.
And back.
So that was all done, so really.
That's all
Long Acre is
done,
really
that was
just-
phase 1, Long Acre and Bass Bay. And,
Okay.
they did do the sewer.
But it
I
all
thought we
goes
were talking
down.
about Lee Lore or the,
I remember Keith saying that it was a huge complication to do those roads because it's flat and there's no place for the runoff to go. I mean, you already flood down there across the street from you, behind
yeah, well,
Ryder's.
across the street's one thing, but, the water that comes, there's no drain coming down Lee Lore to get it to the lake, in theory. Maybe there's some collection down on my end, but here's the runoff now covers over the road, ices up. I don't know if we had complaints of water in people's basement, I'm not sure.
But I just remember Keith saying that was too flat to put the stormwater runoff in.
You can't make the roads go like this and make it all go to the lake like we on the other streets. It's not gonna work, it's not gonna happen.
Well, they had 2 choices, they could either go to the lake or up to Chippewa Road and then down to the inlet. And both are
It's
flat.
slow, gradual,
It's gradual
it
from
gradually
Chippewa.
goes down to the lake, but it's flatter than any other roadway or surface in the village.
Could very well be.
And then unless there was some kind of, I remember Keith saying unless there was some way to pump the water into the lake. Because there's just not enough downhill slope on those roads. And I think that's why, didn't they redo Shorefield and just pave it instead of trying to mess around with,
It was probably at least 10 years ago, they repaved Northfield, Shorefield, and I thought Lelore. And it could have been 15 years ago that they did it. It was just a resurfacing job. They had elected at that time to not do those roads. They were in not great condition, they needed repaved, but they weren't gonna do the extensive.
because there was no place for
And
them.
I think that might have been one of the very first years Bud was on council. I don't know how long he's been on council, because I remember having a conversation when it came up here. He was helping out that year selling the beach passes and boat stickers, and he had a short conversation with me about that back then.
I know Keith had work done on Shorefield a couple years ago, and they were gonna split that and have some of the water run to Chippewa Road and some to the lake.
I think on Northfield.
It was over by your house that some of that started, because
Yeah.
the driveway
between
was
yours and
slow, and now
Kelly's.
it's back.
Well, and I think, Crossings put in their own storm sewers or something.
They put in a catch basin as well as your house,
Our
when it was
house
built, a
did,
catch
yeah.
basin was put in, and Kelly also, I believe they had one put in too, didn't they, when they built their home?
And we put in one next to Sandora,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. we
going
did.
up.
I believe so, but I'm just going from fuzzy memory.
No, it's okay.
Well, there's a catch basin at the end of Lelore too now, in front of my house. That's new. Last year they put it in, because all the water would gather there.
I'm not sure if it's Lelore or not Lelore, but Northvale or Shorefield. That when they were doing the, I took pictures of it, but when they were doing the fiber, some of those pipes got crushed, and I don't know if they replaced them. I walked by with the dogs and the pipes were crushed, and then the next time I walked by, they were
Speak of the devil.
done
Were
with
you
the work
listening to us
and
and got ticked off, or what?
buried everything.
We're going off topic, I gotta get back on track.
So I remember walking by, I took pictures of it, because it was, the pipes were crushed, so I don't know if that's gonna affect the drainage or not.
I know water comes up through the street.
Bud can answer some of these questions that you guys are probably talking about right now.
So let me recap real quick, guys.
Uh-oh.
The purpose of tonight's meeting was that you clearly understand that we, as a village, are running out of money. As you can tell by the spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet was my creation. I gave it to Katie, in turn gave it to you, Joanne, because I didn't have a way of examining our historical data compared to our current expenditures. It was the only way I could kind of put that in some kind of logical framework. But you can see by looking at the historical data as it lays out, our costs are on the march, getting larger and larger. And it's entirely reasonable. I have a construction dude here in our midst, a youngster, Matt. And I'm sure that Matt would tell me that yes, indeed, it's gotten cheaper. The more years I spent in the construction industry, costs are sliding down into the valley. That is not true. Anything you want to talk about, whether it's salary, benefits, equipment, maintenance, fuels, hydraulics, pieces, parts, it's going up, and in some cases, it's going up significantly. And you're held hostage. Because I can't pave a street with a combine or a corn picker. It requires specific machinery. It requires a specific operator. It requires specific compositions. And they're not casual about it. You have to measure up to the standard put in front of you. They have, for example, we work in combination, cooperation with Medina County Sanitary Engineer. We replace the sanitary lines, we replace the water lines, which they own. We make their standards at their direction, and they have an on-site inspector daily to ensure that we comply with today's standards. We in turn have an on-site inspector to ensure that we comply with the roadway and the stormwater sewer lines. And Matt can tell you, when you're dealing with construction standards on this scale, it's not kind of, sort of. It's exactly precise or you tear it out. Period. No discussion. The 4-day work week, there was some discussion about four-day work week. What they have realized is there's greater efficiency to be derived by a 10 or 12-hour workday than eight hours times 5. Some of these guys are driving from Timbuktu. So when I get their ass there, I want them there with sufficient amount of time to get the job done scheduled for that day. Now, when we did the lower end of Brookshire, I was there every day. And as a matter of fact, most of the construction jobs where I helped Keith, I've been there every day. I know the on-site inspectors. I establish a relationship with these guys. And I don't care if they're operating a machinery or in a shovel, they tell you important things that you need to know. And there's no substitute for not being there. None. Leslie, you made a comment about being proactive and having a 5-year plan. Well, that's great. What we stumble on is that we're a bunch of part-time employees. We have other jobs, other occupations, other sets of responsibilities. And it's, some folks, you know, that leap is just too large. They come from a different world of work, and they don't have the personal ability to develop something like that that would be particularly sophisticated. So in this case, we have a very positive relationship with Engineering Associates. They help us lay out the engineering plan and design for our village. And Keith, to his credit, did a very comprehensive job. We all know Keith, we know how talented he was. And he systematically started on one end and has been working forward. And we're halfway done with Brookshire, third of the way. And then we have Park Lake. Then we have some of Briarwood. And then we cross the creek. And then we have Northvale, Leelore, and Shorefield. Now, we got lucky on the far end because Keith, with his relationship, got a phone call. Hey, I got all this tonnage of blacktop. Would you like some? Well, yeah, I can help you out. So they put that blacktop down on Northvale, Shorefield, and Leelore.
How many years ago was that?
I'm gonna guess around 10-ish. But that has served us well and has lasted a very long time because those roadways are very lightly traveled. This winter kicked our butt. I have an estimate for most paving for $74,000 in change. And if we don't fix Bungalow Bay, we're gonna lose it. What binds blacktop together is the asphalt mixture. And when that starts drying out, it loses its cohesiveness. You start getting gravel, you get alligator backs, the corners start falling off the edges. And for those of you who lived up in that neck of the woods, you know exactly what I'm talking about. My personal feeling, as unpleasant as you may find it, is that we are at a point in our history. We need more money, and we don't have a tax base, we don't have a factory, or some large commercial enterprise where we can generate some extra income. Now, if you've gone to RITA and looked at the RITA site, RITA, Regional Income Tax Agency, they service all but 7 of 88 counties in the state of Ohio. And you'll see jurisdictions large and small. And you'll see tax rates of 0.666 to 2.5. It's across the board, across the scale. Now, you could argue, successfully or not, that I'm working and I'm gonna pay tax, and Joe Schmo from Kokomo is driving on the road that I just paid for. Okay? We did opt not to have imposed an income tax. We could assess the property owners along the street that we're doing. Guess what? There's gonna be somebody who doesn't live there driving on that street. And I live on the street, Craggy Creek. And the majority of the traffic on that street is not by property owners. It's a throughway, like Garmin is, like Lelor is to an extent, like Longacre is to an extent. My humble opinion is we are blessed to live in an outstanding community of people from all walks of life. We're kind of nestled away under the radar. And we have an incumbent duty, a charge, if you will, to do the very best we can to take care of this community, to move it into the future. I don't like being relegated to being a fireman. Crawling up in the treetop, scanning the village, looking for a fire, drop down out of the tree, run out there and put the fire out. Crawl back up in the tree, look for the next fire. I would like to have a 5-year plan. It just isn't practical here. We're too small. We're too sparse. We don't have an aide de camp. We don't have administrative assistants. We can reach out into the community and call somebody with a particular talent to help us. And we're lucky that we have a guru like Gary, who has his fingers in all kinds of pies and diligently does the math, or we'd be in big trouble in a heartbeat. But, so where are we going with this? I don't know, you can't, as hard as I've thought about this, there is no simple answer. It is a complex, complicated scenario of doing a grant. And I think, hell's bells, who's gonna believe what you're telling them? And if you call this, in this scenario, it's one thing. But switch hats because they're gonna put you in a different funding source, so we're not gonna call it that anymore, we're gonna call it something else. That, boys and girls, is just the environment we do business in. We can't change that structure. That's just a reality of our life. And with respect to large equipment coming to the site, they're very judicious with doing that now. They only bring the big piece of equipment that's uniquely designed to do a particular portion of the job or the repair when they need it. For the very reason you talked about. They don't want that sitting around. So they truck it in, they do what they gotta do, and get out of it, because they need it somewhere else. I don't know what else to tell you. I'm glad to answer any questions you have. But we find ourselves at the unpleasant reality of, we either do as well as we can with the resources we have available, and that's getting real close to putting lipstick on a pig. Or we do something that's going to give us a little extra money to allow us to secure a loan. And I remind you, that's a 0% loan. What it enables you to do is borrow money from the government at 0% and leave other monies in your sock drawer. If we take the position we're going to only raid our sock drawer every few years, then we're gonna have years of putting lipstick on the pig. It's as simple as that. I don't know how else to soften it. I'd call something different, make it all nice and fuzzy and warm and feel good, but I don't know how to do that.
So I think when, we got this loan we have now, and we're paying out 5,000 something a year to pay it back. So, for 30 years, over a 30-year plan,
Or you can pay it off at any time with no penalty.
no penalty.
Right.
So if we just stick with our current payment program, it will be paid off in
30 years.
30 years. So then we go to another phase, we get another loan, and then we're paying out
10 or 12.
$10,000 or $12,000 a year to pay off those loans.
And I tried to lay those out for you when I gave you those handouts at last council meeting, to give you it's not an exact, but it's pretty damn close of what we could reasonably anticipate in terms of annual requirements, if you will, by piggybacking loans. I mean, we can sustain that procedure for several periods of time. And I know, Mayor, I'm gonna put you on the spot, call you out a little bit. I know you're not in favor of that. You don't want to leave your office or your position feeling like you put a burden on the village. But I don't see it that way for myself. What I see it as a way of managing our expenses in the long term. And as a village, we have expenses.
And not only that, if we take the loan out now, correct me if I'm wrong, and this price, or we wait, the price is gonna go up if we wait 3 years.
No
So,
doubt it will.
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
No doubt it will, exactly. What's been your experience, Matt? Has it gotten any cheaper in the time that you've been doing this?
Right after COVID, a little bit, but.
And when you look like me, you'll look back and say, oh, hell, I wish it was 2025 when things were cheap.
Well, but where I was going was that if we take out a loan year after year after year, then we're at the point where
We're paying 40 to 60,000 a year.
a year to pay off loan number 1, loan number 2, loan number 3, year after year after year. So, I mean, that's where I'm saying, like, oh, if we just keep on robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Well, I guess the way I see it, Barb, is that we have Brook Shore, we have Park Lake, and we got that little hook of Briarwood. I'm sorry, I know it sounds like I don't know what I'm talking about, but when conjured up the names and the configurations. They were pretty wild and crazy. But anyway, I think you know what I mean. And then we go across the street, Northville, Shorefield, Leelore. We have some culverts, some ditches, and some swales. It'd be nice to have an officially designed drainage system in there. And that is possible, although there's a little elevation change from one end to the other. I'd be the first to admit it, but there is change, and it is doable.
Are we able to put storm sewers in when we redo the roads, will the county come in and?
We own storm
Oh, we
sewers.
own the storm sewers, that's right. The county owns the.
County owns sanitary and the water.
Doug has a question.
Question, but.
Yes.
So when you talk about income tax, you're talking about 1%, is that what I heard the other night?
We as legislative authority, we can enact a 1% income tax
Without.
And that would be on,
on a council vote, but
Earned income.
we would have public meetings. And the other thing is, we would have a relationship with Rita, and I'd like to have, I would suggest we have a meeting with a representative from Rita, so that we better understand how that works, because as a governmental entity, we tell them what we want to do and what's gonna be taxed and what manner.
so I have another question about it then, and Gary might be able to answer this. When you look at the actual income that you would get, is there a way to forecast what the income would be to the village? Because if you look at this village, how many actual full-time citizens that would pay this
Yes.
versus the retirees versus the summer homes, or summer people, versus the very poor that may not be paying it. So what actual income would be derived from a 1% income tax on a small portion of the population that live here that work and will pay into it? So that would be an interesting number, I think, to see before we enact something like this.
Oh, we wouldn't do that haphazardly, Deb, and correct me if I'm wrong, 189,000 was their estimate.
I don't believe that for a minute.
I don't either.
189,000 from this village?
But see, to your point, it's full of all those anomalies.
Right.
I got the center, I have the rich man, poor man.
Right.
I have full-time employees, I have part-time employees, I ain't worked in 25 years, it'd be nice if I had a job. Folks. I don't know how to sort all that out, that gets a little complicated. That's why you engage with an organization like Rita, because they can help you figure that out.
That, I guess that's my concern, is that, is it truly gonna bring in that much revenue that would help with these exorbitant fees? Would something like maybe a temporary road levy be more appropriate at this time?
I don't know how to answer that. I guess I'll answer it by speaking for myself. I like to have as many facts as I can before I make a decision. And that's true of us here, you know, we're not a bunch of cowboys. We're not gonna throw our hats in the air and go right off into the sunset. It takes some diligent background work to know what you're talking about, that we have an accurate grasp of. Because when they first responded to Gary and I's inquiry, they were throwing spitballs at it, and we both said, nah, I don't think so. Every place is unique. We all know, all of us who live here, know how unique this place is.
Right.
When you look at our geographical boundaries, they are not squares, they're broken off teeth. The rhyme and reason thereof, I can't respond to. I don't have a clue.
And one last question, if the council would decide on this, is that something that's taken to the people to vote on this? Or is it something that just the council would vote and put onto the, people? I don't know how that works.
I'll put you in a
Did
spot.
you look at my notes?
No,
Did you look at my, because you're like,
From my understanding, up to a certain percent, we can just vote and it would be done.
61%.
And after that percentage, then we would have to take it to the people. Am I correct?
What was the percent?
Or-
What did you-
One, I think it's
1%.
1%.
One, yeah, the legislative authority up to 1%. But as I know my colleagues, we'd never do that. We would talk to the community to get their feel for it. And you might appropriately or inappropriately think, well, you spend your summer or your winters in Arizona, in Texas, in Florida, and you're not earning income, you're retired. We're carrying the freight because we're working. I don't know what the answer is. You could do a street by street assessment. The same thing would be true. The same thing would be true. Some of the streets assessed are where the rich and famous people live.
Is there a road levy out there right now?
Right
I
now.
don't think, is there one? Okay.
We have, how much money does the road levy bring in?
About 54,000 a year. I believe.
54,000 a year, so that had gone up, but still.
Correct.
You've got a bid for just our winter repairs at 74.
Right.
74 and change.
So obviously our road levy could stand a little raising.
When is our road levy up again? Because didn't we just put that on the
We did,
ballot last
we
year?
didn't put very much on.
Yep.
Yeah. And I have been the impetus for this unpleasant topic because the bell is ringing. So what are we gonna do? You know, we have the obligation of representing the community. And we want to be responsive to the community, and we want to do what the community wants. And I want to safely leave my home and not be dodging bricks or large stones. But conversely, I don't want to be caught in out of potholes either.
So one thing, we're fortunate enough to have Leslie here, that hopefully we can bring in some small businesses right out there on our village road. Do we get any money from the little businesses that are out there? Maybe we can recruit in that way.
We only have one.
That's what I'm saying, could we get more? I mean, is that the boundary for Lafayette Township, Lake Road, or do we?
No, not Lake Road.
No, it ends right past the minute mark. I mean, we cut up,
Pain management clinic, if they ever get it done, is in our
So
village.
those
so
are the only
Contessa's is
two.
not in our village, just actually the barber shop.
That's like one of the barber shop, and then.
Century
Cycles.
Cycles, or Cycles R Us, yeah, I'm sorry, and then
Minute
Minute
Mark.
Mark.
How
Yeah,
about
all
the-
of Cyclos, so.
So, and that's something we need to nail down specifically.
I mean, that's
Some
something
of
to
them
look
know
at
for a
over
certain
a
date.
year's period to bring in those businesses that
I
we want.
actually suggested to John that before they remodeled their building, that he look into maybe adding some storefronts across the front, maybe retail or something. I know several people in the village that would probably open something if there was a space, but we have no space. They never designated a downtown Chippewa because everything we needed was in the amusement park. So there's really nothing, you can't put anything at the corner now.
That's commercial.
Now, maybe there's something for us to consider, because Lafayette Township would like to get rid of the 2 vacant parcels at the corner of Lake and Chippewa, and they are offering them to us first if they ever get on this topic of discussion. We've had some, I know they eventually want to get rid of those parcels. So while those are not technically in the village, they would be if we acquired them. And they're commercial.
I mean, that could be something to, you're talking about a 5-year plan, something that could be proactive.
And I
to look
guess
at.
what I meant when I suggested a 5-year plan, I mean, this is my first time as a council member. I've served on many boards where we have a strategic plan. And when I said that, I was just thinking, we know what needs repaired eventually.
Right.
Do we have a playground? Like, oh, maybe 5 years from now, we're gonna need to paint the playground equipment and we're gonna need, that's all I need. I mean, are we looking forward? Or is Joe Smith calling and saying, hey, you guys really need to paint the playground? And we're like, oh, everybody gather around paint, we gotta go paint the playground.
Yeah, that's the way we do it.
Right, exactly. I mean, I would like to see, and on these other boards that I serve on, we're volunteers as well. So Bud's talking about we only have so much time in the day. That's true, but I give that amount of time to the Board of Realtors and, we have different committees. We have committees on this council too, but the committees don't work together. The person that chairs somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but the person who chairs their committee just does their own job and we don't work together as a team. We come to the council meeting as a team, but we don't contact our other committee members for zoning or, you guys sometimes work
Yeah.
together for
We
community
consult each
relations.
other quite often, actually.
Yeah, so I feel, and I don't know who's on Bud's committee for streets, Bud shouldn't have to bear the whole burden of doing
The
the,
committees haven't been used correctly in years. The committees used to be the committee, you'd have the 3 people on the committee, they would have committee meetings. Of all the different committees, except possibly zoning, which did have a meeting every month anyway, because that's how zoning is. And then they would come up with a plan, like say Ken had a parks meeting, and it was in the spring, you wanted to figure out what to do for the summer. Well, at that meeting, you could come up with a plan. You couldn't pass a rule or anything like that, but you could make a plan and bring your plan to the next council meeting and just tell everybody what you're thinking, and then they'd usually pass it. We haven't done those committee meetings in quite some time. I do not know why they stopped. You guys are not alone as committee heads. You do have committees and it's for a reason, so they can reach out. Just like this year, for example, figured I'd give Barb something new to do in her life, so I put her on the Parks Committee. Now, my hope, Ken, you'll have a Parks meeting. Barb is really good at being everywhere in this village and knowing what's going on. And
Yeah.
probably walking around the parks. I'm sure she could come up with some suggestions that maybe nobody thought of because you don't walk around the parks.
She sent me some photographs the other night.
I'll defend my colleagues. I think it's largely the result of we're not spending significant money. And because we live busy lives.
We spent a lot of money the last few years, to think about it.
Simpler is better, we spent some money, but it hasn't been significant.
Well, I'm addressing what Leslie had to say. Everybody is good at their own committee, but you guys are not great at having committee meetings. You're terrible at it, to be honest.
Roads is the money hole, and roads is what's driving this. And it's an expensive venture. I can scare paint a playground, or paint the choo-choo train.
But even if you had roads committee, you have a roads committee, like, for example, the winter work that you have done, you could have had a committee meeting and just discuss what needs to be done in that, and then your committee would know. I'm just saying, that would be some of the things. You give us a good report of what they want to do and stuff, and I'm not just singling out you, I'm just saying, all the committees. To change the subject, did you hear during the discussion before you got here about getting the engineering done?
I did.
And what did you think of that?
I did, and the reason I didn't do that is because I had not yet got the village examined So when Joe came over, that's what most paid. He and I drove the entire village, which I commonly do several times a week. And we looked at the entire village, but before that, I wasn't going to commit to spending $38,000 for the engineering costs, because that's money I take out of my budget. And I had no appreciation for what would personally be required for the village to do its winter repair. So I didn't commit to that.
Gary said it, well, who said it? That it go up to 5 years? The studies? Are you the one that said that, Gary?
5 years on what study?
The engineering studies?
He said,
I thought they were.
that.
I mean, 5 to 10, depending on whether or not the,
If you use Brookshore as an example, we committed to the engineering study of $56,000 maybe 3 years before we did.
For the whole
project.
road?
No, just the lower end. And I committed, or felt like I was instrumental in committing us to taking on that project, because we made that investment. So we can't be casual about doing an engineering study. That's a commitment that we're gonna do that project. Otherwise, it's
well,
money you spent for no real benefit.
well, what Gary had said though is that we could get the engineering done today, and whether or not we do that road in a year or 2 years or 5 years, we still have the engineering done already. We don't have to redo it. It might have to be tweaked, but it doesn't have to be redone 5 years from
And
now.
that's largely true.
In case their price went up like everything else.
Yeah, that would make sense, I think.
Yeah, but there's no hierarchy of priority. You were focusing on Brookshore, and you gave 5 other places you wanted money to go, which was way more money than you'll ever get in your lifetime.
And that's just,
So my-
and I don't, as well as I know Keith, as well as we all know Keith, I don't know how I arrived at those phases, if you will. But I think.
Actually, I think him and Meltzer did it 10 years ago.
It was just a systematic progression across the village.
Well, it's at,
Sorry,
when you
you are.
re-index 10 years later, bud, is Brookshore the highest priority? I mean, if you're not wanting to spend money, engineering money, you would want to spend it where it's supposed to. Vitally used.
Well, I would say this. Check.
We already spent money on 1/3 of that project.
I understand that, but as far as the hierarchy of what Brookshore is, I don't.
Was there
It's just-
something,
Where it's sequenced in.
maybe Gary can tell, like we have, do we get points? We started Brookshore, so are there additional points that are awarded because we're extending that project? It has nothing to do, we could do the other side of the village and it wouldn't matter as far as points.
Right, it doesn't.
I thought I
The
had,
points are recalculated for each project.
I just thought I had remembered Keith saying years ago that if you start something, you got a little bit of extra if you were continuing it.
No.
Okay,
I can tell you what we did in Burbank, is we had prioritized every road project in Burbank. We completed 4 out of 11. We got 70 votes. We know what the 7 are. Council has the ability at any time to change that priority schedule based on the condition of the road. We've got it all listed.
Well, I simply move on where we as a council, I don't know if anybody particularly remembers, but we committed to take on that engineering cost. So we either followed up on the engineering cost, or we flipped the ditch.
You select the one that's the highest priority for your engineering costs.
Yeah, is that the highest priority?
You still have engineering costs. You're just selecting where.
No,
where-
you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. We'd already committed to that. We'd already committed that Brookshore was our next When we merged with Briarwood Village, 98, they had far less money to work with than did Chippewa on the lake. Their maintenance was far less thorough because they were constrained by finances.
Because their citizens voted away all their taxes. So they were paying 0% tax. Chippewa Lake was paying something like 16%.
So, and Brookshore is one of those Briarwood acquisitions. As is Park Lake.
How old is the infrastructure, the sewer lines, the water lines? Is there an age on those of when they were originally installed, when they were last updated?
I don't have,
Briarwood became a village in 1955. They never installed the sewers like Chippewa Lake.
now, if you look at Gary's handout, you're gonna find an estimate of practical longevity for the different facets of what you replace. So when we do a road repair, we do what's called a deep base stabilization, which involves mixing concrete in with the dirt. And Gary helped me out here, it's either a 50 or a 40-year time estimate. So we're making an investment way into the future. This isn't something we're gonna have to redo in 5 years. So we have taken, Keith has taken the long view with the road projects that we are in fact continuing yet today.
When you do a mill and grind and you do a resurface, you're basically saying that for 8 years, you should not have any pothole repairs on that roadway. Okay?
Should.
Lifetime of a resurface roadway is about 20 years. But for the first 8, you should have no pothole repairs or things like that.
You know, it's fun reading, go to OPWC and look at their website, and then they will dazzle you with all kinds of facts and figures and anticipated longevity based upon what you do and how you do it.
I understand the stabilization stuff. I remember when they did that on Craggy Creek, but I don't think at that time they did not replace the water and sewer lines like they're doing now. So how many water lines have broken on Craggy Creek and the sanitary engineers come in and fix it, and they don't fix it the way it was fixed
When you do a complete
when
replacement.
they did the road, then they just fill that hole in with rocks instead of that stabilizing.
That's right, they didn't do water lines on Craig Creek. They
What's
just,
that?
they did not do, they just did sewers, they didn't do water lines.
So now how many places along Craggy Creek are you driving along, you know, because you're hitting all those places where they were repaired by, I mean, in front of your house, in front of my house, in front of Judy's house. So, I mean, it's not fixed the way that it was originally fixed when they redid the road, so it's gonna be compromised. But, I mean, now we are doing water lines and sewer lines with all the projects, so that should alleviate that problem.
And the reason that change was made is the two horses finally decided to get together and say, how can we benefit? Because as a sanitary engineer, I don't want to follow your road project. And my act of kindness is cut a patch out and do a repair. Because when you do a road repair or replacement, that's a violent process. And as a result, age, water lines, sewer lines break, crack, start to leak, do what they're not supposed to do. So the people come to the realization, let's work together and do this in one fell swoop.
Yeah, we weren't doing that with Craig Creek, and when they do that, then of course they pay their portion.
Right, that's not, we're not, right. So I think we do need to have somebody from Rita come to a meeting and explain some of this stuff to us, whether or not we have another finance meeting separate from a council meeting and have Rita explain this to us, because the questions that you asked are questions that I had jotted down after our last meeting. The residents in the village are already paying 1.25% income tax for the schools, Cloverleaf schools, in addition to our property tax. The schools already get sales tax, from any kind of sales in Medina County that was added years ago. If we add this 1%, is it an eternity that's gonna be taxed? Is that gonna be, can we
Well,
say?
you could treat it like a water faucet if you want.
That would never happen. I mean,
Turn it
once
on,
that's in
turn it
place.
Once it's
Well,
on.
but that
It'll
sales
never
tax
go away.
is, like, that's what I'm saying, like,
It's possible,
Rita would be
but it
different,
never
but that sales tax is, that
Yeah.
sales tax is on forever.
Yep.
So can we say this is gonna be a 5-year thing or a 10-year thing?
I-
But the
I-
thing is that we need to find out what that roads levy is generating and when it expires and when we're gonna.
Do you have to wait for it to expire, to add to it?
Were you able to call Alan today, Ken?
No, I
You
didn't.
and I exchanged text.
Yeah, I would be in favor of maybe having a special, roads levy, higher and take it to the people and let them decide. And they vote it down, well, that's their decision, then having a tax that's never gonna go away, because it won't go away.
People have been pretty good at passing our levy.
Yeah,
Yeah, and they're not gonna be
I okay,
Yeah,
so
that's
just for
tax.
disclosure, that
Yeah,
the residents need to see this chart, that this is, I mean, I know that we discussed this when we put the last one on there, that, hey, listen, people, we have gotten this much money in free roads from these grants.
Yeah.
This is our cost, so we will put this roads levy, and then it passed.
Yep.
So we can communicate that, but I am a retired person. I'm not gonna be generating money towards this, project. Whatever money I make from officiating, so you're gonna get $50 from me for income tax levy, but there's a lot of people that are snowbirds, that are, low income, that are, are renters that are in the village. There's a lot of people that this is gonna be a burden on, that there's a lot of people that, if you're in Florida for X number of days, you're considered a Florida resident, not a Chippewa resident, so you're not gonna get their money anyways. Well, they're retired anyways, so we're not gonna get their money anyways.
But see, your conversation brings up a valid point that I tried to make. We can what if it and guesstimate,
So,
but we
Need
don't,
actual figures, yeah.
we don't have accurate information.
so let's have another finance meeting and have somebody from Rita clarify this stuff and answer these questions for us. And maybe a few more residents who care might show up and answer some of these questions, get information about a roads levy and how much did the last one generate? And, with the recent appraisals on property, is that gonna change the amount of money that we generate from it? Or are we gonna continue? I mean, I think you and I are on the same line, that we're gonna continue to accumulate this debt, that we're gonna be paying whatever money we generate from a roads levy is just gonna be going out every year just to pay off these loans.
Well, and that's okay, isn't it? Because what we're doing is maintaining our infrastructure. That clearly is the village's
Ultimately,
biggest expense.
but
Yeah, but
in debt,
if you put a levy
it's a
out there
never-ending
and the
debt.
community and the residents shoot it down, and then your community and your residents come to complain about you about their road, you're
right.
gonna remind them,
Mhm.
this is our funds, this is what's available, this is what's not available to us. And we tried to generate something for you, to do this for you, and you didn't like it and you shut us down. We apply, you're getting 1% whether you like it or not, and then you're gonna have pitchforks thrown at you.
Well, that's why I said we need to find a way to reach people where they are. Yes, they're not here. Yes, they're not going on the website. We're a small community. We're not like a giant, we're not Cleveland, Cuyahoga County. This is Chippewa Lake.
We're Mayberry, we're
Maybe
tiny.
maybe in the newsletter, we put something
This
about
would be great.
Like,
No,
how can we communicate with you? Because we have real things happening that you need to be aware of. And we have council meetings, you can watch them online, like, I feel like it is our responsibility.
We put so much out there. I mean, Facebook is a great opportunity, and the newsletters.
It is, and it's not.
People don't even take their newsletters off their mailbox,
The
they just
problem
leave
with
them there.
Facebook is that so many people join that page thinking they're in Chippewa Lake,
And
but
then
they're not. And so when we talk about what we're doing in Chippewa Lake, people chime in that aren't from here, you know, and
Well, you guys gotta remember, our last two levies, especially the last one, we didn't even say one word about that. As a
It
council,
passed.
we didn't even say, oh, don't forget to vote for the levy.
Right.
And it passed.
right.
And we didn't really,
I do,
Put signs
I
out,
do
we didn't
believe our
promote it.
residents here are intelligent,
How did you
and
guys
they
know?
know that we are doing a good job.
Right.
Yeah.
Loaning money.
Last meeting,
The last council meeting, that was discussed that this was gonna come up.
You interact with a different group of folks. How do we communicate with them more
It
effectively?
was on Facebook, Katrina put it on
Yeah.
Facebook.
Trina,
Yeah.
Hang on a minute. My question to the Hornings was, they associate with some different folks.
they do. I can name a
They need to associate with better people.
How do we better communicate? How do we reach?
I get on Facebook, I've never seen anything about anything going on in this village other than the stupid stuff that
Yeah.
nobody cares about, so.
Do you ever go to our village website?
Oh, never mind.
I do
I don't-
sometimes.
I don't think that gets much traction, actually.
maybe we need to share on social media more about the village website.
What's
Maybe we need
something
to
on
say, well, like the Lions
Facebook
Club, I
about
say,
this meeting?
here's the Lions Club meeting, I try to say it on Friday, a reminder on Monday. Here's where you can go to find our minutes.
There was
Here's
some
where-
on Facebook about this meeting.
There was one post about this meeting.
Katrina did put a post up, and I can speak for, I think there's a lot of people right now on our Facebook page, like Mark Ritter, he never posts anymore because it was a fun place for him. But now that there's a whole list of like different rules, I think people are afraid to communicate on there like
He
they used
posted
to.
last week.
Did he?
Yeah,
I
we
haven't
were
seen
talking about
anything on it for
running.
him forever.
I mean, we.
But I think people
we
are
put flyers in the
watching it
menu
as
bar.
what they used to, because the interesting stuff that was there, the stupid stuff that we shouldn't be paying attention to,
Right.
wasn't drawing us to that to start scrolling.
I got a call last week from someone, oh, I think I told you guys, that bought a house on Lake Road and wanted to know how they enact their lake rights. I'm like, you're not in the, they're like, no, we're in Chippewa, right?
Nope, we're
No,
not in the
you're
village.
not in the village.
But they all have lake rights.
And then everyone has to answer questions to join the village Facebook page, okay? One of the questions is, do you live in the village? What is your address? Yes, my address is 4444 Chippewa Road. I live by the water towers. You don't live in the village, like, and you can't say, sorry, you don't live in the village.
So you have a Chippewa mailing address,
Right, and so, you know,
including
it's,
Gloria.
anyway, I'm just saying, we need a way to just communicate with our residents. I've segmented people out, on an email list that I have, I literally took the time to designate, these are village residents, these are Gloria Glen residents, and these are people outside.
Let's
We need a
you know,
welcoming
when they want to know something, they really get together. For example, the water scheme. That took no time at all to get practically the whole village involved in that.
It was just,
You know what?
it was a phone
You know
call
why?
chain.
We printed flyers and went door to door and had and that was something I want to bring up. Ultimately, when we are done here, whatever we do, I hope we are as passionate about our roads and our community as we were about saving water skiing on the lake. Like, this is serious. We need to find a way to reach people. And when we wanted to do that water ski thing, people printed flyers, people came together, they went door to door because they were passionate about this. And that's how I feel about every other thing in the community. We need to get passionate about it and communicate. That's,
A lot of times though, if it doesn't directly affect a person, it's not their street,
It's their
They're
money
not- they're not
coming out of their pocket though. if
Yeah,
they
but they're
do.
not gonna worry
People have a
about it.
tendency, you know that.
If it doesn't affect
Directly
me, I
involves
can't
them.
see it, I don't care, and that's just the human mindset.
740-ish residents in the community, and how many people showed up to save the wake? You know, I mean, even just the meeting to learn about it, and half the people, not half, a lot of the people at the meeting that came for that don't even water ski on the lake. They just wanted to hear what was going on with the lake.
We had more meeting, this place was packed for the lit fiber meeting.
It was.
We don't get that many people at a meeting all
Al, you
year.
started to say something, what were you
Well,
gonna say?
First of all, and maybe it's been put out there, I think, first of all, we need to know, how much money do we need? How much are we figuring we need to raise per year? And the options, like you said, this 1%, which I don't think that's gonna fly. I don't think it's gonna give us anything that we would need. And what the road levy, what kind of road levy would we need to add to get this dollar amount that we, which I haven't heard, is there a dollar amount that we are requesting per year for the roads program?
I'm laughing because I'm thinking, geez, how do I answer that?
That's a tough one.
We're paying,
Well, you got those two.
what was, do you have it there in front of you?
I do, I think you're gonna want
Which one?
The one that said option.
No,
yeah,
Gary, when we took the loan for Brookshore, how much?
155.
And we're paying back like $5,000. No.
you want what you emailed us last week.
$5,000.
That
I want this one.
I want to answer your
What I'm
question.
passing.
What I'm trying to do is understand our income flow. And I can get that handled pretty good. We can do projections on that. And let's just say we did, our income flow was roughly $408,000. It's unaudited, but that's what, so you can see what it was last year. And the auditor would probably give us projections for this year. We can lay it out month by month. Then on the expenses, the way I'm looking at expenses, we have, I'm segregating out the larger projects. Those are big numbers where our operating ones, whether it's council members, beach attendants, sheriffs, and whatever the things, the Oprah and all related to that, that'll be a separate category, and these big projects will be kind of standalone. The math that I'm looking at is we had, on the income sheet, if you look at one that I did was, at 23, started out with property tax across there. In 2023, we had 357,000 in income. These are unaudited numbers. 24, we had 408,000 in income. And on the expense sheet that I was doing, we spent, let's just say we spent 250,000 before the road, before the big projects. So 250 or 280 in the West Florida for. You got $120,000 of cash allocated to road activity. I gotta check and see if you're gonna take, say we got 110, you're gonna take 74 out of that for repair. So that leaves you $35,000 to accumulate for cash for the next project.
Gary can help me out, but I think roughly, broadly speaking, I've got like 134,000 uncommitted money available to me in the road project fund. I'm a heartbeat away from reducing it by $74,500.
Is there any way to work in cooperative with Lafayette on these patch and fill kind of stuff?
I've had that conversation in the past, and it's been, no, we've got our own roads, our own projects, our own budget.
Two of the trustees are up for election this year. You might find a more cooperative spirit.
No, and I'm not saying they're being uncooperative.
They don't have it, they don't have
Right.
Say that again?
it. If they don't have it,
What
they
I'm
don't
doing
have
is
it.
we're sharing costs maybe because they're doing bigger projects, getting a lower rate, and we can buy off that lower rate with our stuff. That's kind of where I'm getting.
I can have that discussion, surely, but,
That winter paving bid do you have to get that, do you have to get bids on that because of the amount?
No, I can bid up to 75,000. Used to be,
50,
my ceiling was 50, they raised it to 75.
okay.
And I already have that money set aside.
Does it seem odd that they can go up to 75 without opening up to other people, that the bid came in?
The way the cost has gone up, right?
Well, I guess I'll answer you in this way. I'm kind of a relationship person. And if I have a positive relationship with a contracting company that does better than average work, and I can get that work done in a timely fashion and lay my head down at night and go to sleep, not fretting, are they cheating me? Are they cutting corners? Sometimes you gotta be careful about getting a better deal. Because a better deal might be a cheaper deal. Particularly true when you don't have a positive working relationship with the contractor. That's just been my experience over time. That's a let me down that.
Well, you got your relationships, and then I would hope that Engineering Associates gets to see a 30,000 foot level, people are participating
Oh,
at
yeah,
that level.
absolutely.
So you have things that support you, but reality is you just have so much cash to work with, and you've got to, that's the cards you're dealt.
And
If you want to do Rita, I was just doing Rita, we got 189,000, and we got 408,000 last year, that's a 45% increase in taxes. Not even looking at a 30%, they're talking 30% more on real estate taxes next year. So, common man's gonna hard back real hard. So you gotta be really judicious on how you use your money and request your money and be real. This is all the money I got to do projects.
I absolutely agree. And what I find troubling is when we start throwing around percentages versus hard dollars, sometimes that gets a little skewed. So you have to be very careful in how you communicate with the recipient, exactly what you're going to talk about, so that you provide them accurate information that they grasp and understand, so that they're not walking away saying, oh, freaking shit, 30,000? They're 30% increase? Wow. That's crazy. So I would rather deal with the hard numbers.
I think usually when, like, if we come out and say we're gonna have a 0.5 mil levy added to the roads, that would cost a homeowner this much money per 100,000. So they can come out with a number. They do have that number. So if we say 30%, then 30% your home value, I mean, we can come out with that number, but the hard line is that a 30% increase is a huge chunk.
So,
Well, it's just the reality. I'm not just a cash flow guy. You got so much money coming in, and if you do the A, B, C, and D, that could generate this much, with some predictability that'll get to you. So, but it might take 1 to 3 years to implement, depending on how you go about it. In the meantime, you gotta play with the cards you're dealt. And I understand Bud's plight, that if you're dealt a certain amount of cards, that you gotta play.
so we need to know the village's total taxable property value. I could probably get that data from the auditor, if you're okay with me contacting the auditor to get that. Is that all right?
Yeah,
I have other questions for the auditor, please do.
That would be good.
I think to know exactly what we're paying out in terms of property assessment, school assessment, and just lay it out so that we have it. We
Right.
have it.
It's good information
We have an accurate grasp
Right.
what it costs.
I think you
Total
got a
number of
better chance
households.
of the levy than the income tax. I don't believe you've got the majority of the council behind you on that one.
And I think once we have these facts in place about the total number of households, the average home value, that'll give us we need to know how much money we need. The other question I found here was desired levy length. Of course, we won't know that until we know these other numbers, 5, 10, 15 years. Are we talking about a 2025 or a 2026 levy? So, I mean, once we get some other facts in order, then we can put the other facts together and maybe have some kind of a worksheet to share with people.
And to your point, Joanne, about you're of the opinion that I don't have
I don't think you have
council
a
member support.
majority at this moment.
I would rather have the information and make an informed decision.
Oh, you should get the information, yes. But we also need to get the
And
levy.
once we have the information, if we collectively say no, then no it is. Then we throw out the tomatoes and look for turnips.
Well, we
And
need
it's
more information on both subjects.
And is our street levy just going to be to fund this $843,000 in repairs, or are we talking about long-term goals of?
Well, there's your 5-year plan.
There we
would
go.
think it would be the long-term goals,
Right.
at least a 10-year, because all of these roads to finish everything to the end is going to at least take another 10 years before we're completed the projects.
I'll
Before we
remind
start over
everybody,
again.
we're supposed to have a stormwater management plan. What do you think of it?
Goes downhill.
Yeah, so all goes away. That's our storm management.
Listen, my house has a stormwater management plan.
Well, decision-making, but you're exactly right. My answer is always no until I have enough information to say yes.
Right.
So it's always a negative until you get to where can you come down to yes or no?
Coming up on my 8th year. We have largely stuck our heads in the sand. And this problem didn't just pop up last week. It has been in the pot, fermenting and boiling. I don't want to grab it before it boils over. Whatever our collective decision is, however we best put that decision together, we can't keep ignoring the pot. Now, I'm coming up on my last few months of service. But the obligation that I'm fulfilling now is going to be passed on. Somebody's going to take that baton and run with it. And I want them to be as best equipped as possible. And I want us to be equipped.
Well, no, your thought process is totally true.
And even though you are the chair of this committee, we all need to know this. I think this is perfect timing. And like you stated when you first presented this to us, this is a community that people want to come to. It's a beautiful community, and if we don't continue to take care of it, and if the residents don't think it needs taken care of, then that's another issue. But we need to, if we're going to go to the residents and ask for money, we need to convince them that we need the money and we care about our community, and this is why. It's a
And we know
beautiful
what
place
we're
to live.
talking
We want to keep it that way.
And
So
I
Convince
think
them.
I
residents
will
are smart.
contact, I
And
will
they know
make
that.
a list of questions, contact the auditor, formulate it, and if anybody has any other questions they want to send, and then you're going to contact Rita, get information from them.
Yeah, I know they will come talk to us. They'll come tell us who they are, what they're about, how they go about doing business.
So the school income tax would actually give us a guidance of what the income flow would be, and that's an income tax percent.
In all honesty, I think this is a really good exercise for everybody to know where their tax dollars are being spent. So I mean, I think,
Coming from and going to.
right, that's what I meant, right.
I mean, I agree with you about, the village is beautiful and everything, but I do know too that I pay more in property taxes here than what my mom does in Brunswick. And I know we have a much smaller tax base than they do. I'm paying a significant amount more here than she is there, and they have full-time police, full-time fire,
Right?
roads. I mean, they have so much more going on,
But they
parks.
also have a lot more residents to
And
spread
they
the
have a
money
larger
across,
tax base.
right?
I understand that but here we are
But
again,
we're a smaller, yeah. it should
we're
make
much
sense,
smaller
yes.
considerably. And we're just gonna keep on adding to the burden, the tax burden for these people that, how many of them then are gonna,
And property values are going up too.
right?
There's a lot of,
So it's gonna continue to go up and now we're asking for more.
But at least we're asking instead of telling.
Right.
I'm not comfortable telling, I'm
I
not
agree.
comfortable saying, hey, we're doing this, you're paying 1%, whether you like it or not.
Right.
At least if we take it as a levy, it's asking what our residents want versus saying, this is what you're going to do.
and I think also in this packet of information we're all putting together, we should have the information about the loans and, you know.
If you guys are quick, you can get it all together in time for Tamsin to put it in the newsletter.
What's the deadline for the newsletter?
Yesterday,
Oh.
Oh.
I haven't heard
Whoops.
from anybody,
Oh, gosh, I had tons of stuff.
except for a text message. I got a text message. But no, at the end of the month would be really nice.
I'll get that over to you.
Yeah, because I usually have this done
I
and
bet
out
Doug
the
got
first
hers
week of
too,
May,
so-
but I would like to have it out
Ken, you
sooner.
need to get the key and boat ramp stuff.
Yep, yeah. It's a key here.
Okay, so everybody's gonna look into something. Leslie, you're looking levy, Bud's gonna get the income tax lady. Everybody else gonna get their stuff ready for the newsletter.
Yep.
I'm gonna write the newsletter.
Mornings are gonna go tell all their friends what that happened here tonight.
So they hang out.
Whoever we hang out with.
Midwest, tough Midwest.
Is there anything else that anybody want to bring up?
No, here's, I did, this is 23, this is.
I did get the fire extinguishers updated today,
Yes.
Okay, good.
but they charged us a nickel for that because it was a 6-year update.
Oh, well.
So it was quite a bit more than it is for a yearly update.
Okay, so somebody want to make.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you guys for coming.
Oh, you're welcome.
All two of them.